After a semi-long hiatus of 2 or 3 days, I guess, I am back. A lot of stuff goes on, so if I make a video and you don't see me for 2 or 3 days, it's not like I've given up. Not that I'm necessarily thinking everybody who subscribe or watch my cat channel casually are anticipating my commentary. I'm not saying that at all. But if I'm gone for a couple of days, you don't see me around. I'm taking care of other things. I look forward to doing this as a not just as a part-time hobby, but as a real job at some point. Of course, got to worry about YouTube and what they do to independent political commentators. All the demonetization and taking down channels and fucking up the algorithms is not good. And I'm even nervous saying this because even though I'm a nobody as far as the commentators go, they're going after really small channels, and I am a small channel. Anyway, let me talk about Joe Biden. President Joe Biden fired five staffers, I believe, this past week for smoking weed, smoking marijuana. What's troubling most about it is that smoking marijuana should have never been illegal in the first place. You should not be fired for smoking marijuana. And now, I'm not going to say there will be some nuances. I mean, sure, if you're if you're if you're a pilot, or if you're a bus driver, or if you're operating heavy machinery, or just your train conductors, what have you. In your spare time, you should not. It'd be like drinking. You should not be under the influence, of course. But should should you should your life be micromanaged by the government? I mean, seriously, if you're flipping hamburgers at McDonald's, and this is not to disparage people who flip hamburgers at McDonald's. I'm just saying, if you're doing jobs that are not going to be a direct danger to people, if you work at the post office, if you if, you know if you're digging a ditch, if what have you, if you're doing a lot of work that's not going to pose a direct harm to others, and you're smoking marijuana in your free time, should you be terminated for it? Hell no. Hell no, not at all. Not at all. But as I said, I mean, I wouldn't advocate you being a pilot and getting drunk off your ass and flying on a plane. I will apply that same standard. But no, marijuana should be fully legalized. Is basically what I'm trying to say. But here's the problem with Joe Biden firing those staffers. In the past, Kamala Harris smoked weed while she was in college. I mean, didn't we all? Just as troubling as Kamala Harris herself, our vice president. If those staffers gotten terminated due to smoking weed in Washington D.C., where smoking weed is already legal, shouldn't that same standard be applied to Vice President Kamala Harris? I mean, for what I understand, the staffers, when being screened for their position in the Biden administration, were very upfront and open. Hey, I did smoke marijuana in the past, and I'm sorry, I'm thirsty. And so, after getting hired and everything being copacetic, they got terminated anyway. Now, here's another thing about Kamala Harris. While she was in college in the 1980s, she smoked marijuana. She smoked weed, and Joe Biden's previous boss, Barack Obama, he smoked weed too. He even did cocaine. I'm not making a judgment call against Obama or Harris for their past drug usage. In fact, if anything, I probably respect them more. Um, that's a redeemable aspect about him. But here's another thing. As the Attorney General from 2011 to 2017, Kamala Harris was a 1980s, 1990s era old fashioned drug warrior. Um, Incarcerating a lot of African Americans, and it's not even just African Americans for the sake of African Americans. I mean anybody who were smoking weed, and she did this out of political opportunism. This was at a time. This was at a time where I would say around 2010, 2011, that time was still a hangover from the 1990s with the Democratic Party having to move away from their traditional pro-labor, semi-social democratic New Deal consensus way, and they became corporatized. Not that they were not corporatized prior to then, but she was operating under that Democratic Leadership Council 1990s Clintonized triangulation or third way. They call it the third way in Great Britain. What Tony Blair did with his New Labour project, which the Labour Party in Britain seemingly done away with a few years ago when Jeremy Corbyn became the leader. And I don't think they're going to go back even with Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer, that's his name. I don't think they're going to go back directly to the Blair way of doing things. But here, there's a civil war in the Democratic Party, and she chosen a side, and she's obviously on the side of the Bill and Hillary Clinton model of what it means to be a Democrat, to be economically as corporatist as the Republicans, to be as neocon as the Republicans on foreign policy. But they're going to go and give you a rainbow flavor to that corporatism and a rainbow flavor to the foreign policy. That's how corporate Democrats operate. And the thing about it, and before anybody says anything about my rainbow comments, that's not toward the LGBTQ community. I'm using rainbow as kind of a catch-all for being socially liberal, and not that I'm against being socially liberal, but I'm just saying it's a juxtaposition, and that's basically the context. I mean this, but here's what it is. The thing is that they offer this package, a juxtaposition of a package. They're just going to be a slightly less shitty than the Republicans. Like that's basically it. Compare that to the Overton window, let's say between the United States and Canada. When observing Canadian politics, there's three parties in Canada that pretty much calls all the shots. Two major parties, a large small party, and multiple smaller parties in Canada. The Liberal Party in Canada, I will argue, will be a less shitty version of the Democrats here. The Conservative Party in Canada would be a less shitty version of the Republicans here. The New Democratic Party of Canada is basically um, in the United States. We're not less shitty, but it's the actual counterpart of the Bernie Sanders movement that's trying to create a social democratic movement here. I just wish it'd be a little more like Canada and a little bit less like the 1980s Reagan, 1990s Bill Clinton era that the United States seems to want to stay mired down in. Anyway, I'm rambling too much. Let me get back to Kamala Harris. As I said, she was a drug warrior, an aggressive drug warrior, and she went out of her way to be the most obnoxious corporate Democrat. And before anybody says, "Oh, there you go, you're just beating up on a woman of color," and let me tell you something. Her father, her father does not want anything to do with her. Her father a, is a black man from Jamaica. Her father wants nothing to do with Kamala Harris because, you know, for what I can tell about her father, he is actually a Marxist. He's much cooler than she is. Just thing about it is that I mean, it happens. You raise your children, and you try to raise them correctly, and then they go into a terrible direction. My understanding in Great Britain, Tony Benn, the late Tony Benn, who was one of the more left wing members of the Labour Party in Parliament for many years, I think like 1950 to 2001. He he his Some of his family members are in the Labor Party, and they're more in the Tony Blair wing of the party. So, yeah, it shows that you try to raise your children right, and sometimes the children will rebel. Sort of like the fictitious family, the Keatons on Family Ties. I believe that's the name of the show from 1982 to '89. The the Keatons tried to raise their kids right, but Alex ended up turning into a Ronald Reagan Republican. So anyway, I just trying to put a little levity into what I have to say here. But let me get back to what I'm saying. Uh, 2011 to 2017 as Attorney General, she did this. She was horrendous, and whatever, I mean, just she was absolutely a horrendous. Um, well, I mean, around 2010, Sarah Palin, who was the vice presidential candidate for John McCain in 2008, 2008, said that she favored a decriminalization of marijuana. Contrast that with Kamala Harris, who was trying to put people behind bars. I am no fan of Sarah Palin in any way, shape, or form. But what does it tell you that Sarah Palin's position in 2010 on weed legalization was more progressive than Kamala Harris while she was the Attorney General in California? I mean, Miss Goody Two Shoes herself, who was the former governor of Alaska, a religious right icon and a foreign policy neocon in many many ways, favored a decriminalization of marijuana. And in 2015, when commenting on marijuana being, having their marijuana laws relaxed, she pretty much she pretty much said, "Well, that's Alaska's libertarian streak," and she was saying that in a favorable way. She was bragging about Alaska's libertarian streak as something positive, and she kind of chuck it up as no big deal. Now, if Sarah Palin doesn't believe in marijuana usage for herself, and she doesn't have a problem with other people smoking weed, and that's what it sounds like, damn, Kamala Harris, what does that have? What does that tell me about you? That you are actually to the right of Sarah Palin on fucking weed. Um, and whatever one thinks of Tulsi Gabbard in 2021, and I am not a fan of Tulsi Gabbard now as I used to be, due to some positions she embraced in the last year. Especially with legislation coming up with, that would discriminate, if implemented, would discriminate against the transgender community in terms of playing in sports teams in school or college, whatever setting. And it turned out that turned out that Tulsi Gabbard was not the person I thought. I thought she was going to be this left wing, you know, this left wing figure that could have complemented the Bernie Sanders ticket. But it turned out that she's a silly turf, and while she's awesome on foreign policy still, and her position on marijuana legalization is better than Kamala Harris, by the way. I'm going to go and defend Tulsi Gabbard briefly here, saying that she was correct in the debates to call out Kamala Harris about how she basically locked people up for marijuana usage and laugh about it. Tulsi Gabbard was correct. In spite of my disappointment with her, she was correct on that, and I will defend her on that um, question. But on back to marijuana usage itself. Now, personally, I just turned 52 years old. It's the year 2021. I don't smoke marijuana currently. I did many, many years ago. I don't care if you smoke marijuana. I mean, it's what you want to do. I haven't smoked marijuana since 2007. Now, I think it should be legal in all 50 states and every U.S. territory. I mean, and Virginia legalized it recently, which I'm actually having a better opinion of Virginia more and more all the time. A state that used to be technically more conservative than North Carolina is turning out to be more progressive. Not only are they starting to vote blue these days, it used to be a solid Republican state for many years. They're starting to vote blue, but not only that, they're they just recently abolished the death penalty, which I thought was awesome, and now they abolished those laws that prohibit smoking weed. Now, once it becomes legal in North Carolina, even though I don't smoke it anymore, the day it becomes legal in North Carolina, let's just say that cannabis cannabis lasagna may be for dinner. Call I Love You Alice B. Toklas lasagna. And if you're not familiar with the term I Love You Alice B. Toklas lasagna or I Love You Alice B. Toklas brownies, it's a reference to two movies from the latter 1960s. The I Love You Alice B. Toklas, actually technically 1970 for Alice B. Toklas lasagna. That was the movie about five gay friends living in Manhattan, celebrating a birthday of a mutual friend at a party, and one of the people brought over I Love You Alice B. Toklas lasagna, and they were kind of getting high off of that. And I said to myself, you know what? That's actually sounds delicious. Name of that movie was the Boys in the Band. I highly recommend it. You don't have to be. I mean, I'm an ugly straight man, ugly heterosexual man, but I would say I highly recommend the film I Love You. I mean, Alice B. Toklas. No, I actually that is the name of the movie. I recommend the film The Boys in the Band. I Love You, Alice B. Toklas. Brownies reference the psychedelic brownies a young hippie girl made for the lawyer that she was friends with in the movie. The movie entitled "I Love You, Alice B. Toklas," starring Peter Sellers, 1968. That movie is about about pretty much an uptight lawyer in California who befriends a young hippie girl, and he gave up his conventional life to join the counterculture. But before doing so, he was a very nice person. He gave this young hippie girl a ride back to he was worried about her being stranded, so he let her stay over his flat for the night, his penthouse. And he was actually a gentleman, and he made himself. He just said, I'm not going to take advantage of you. He didn't. He was very honorable. He slept in his bedroom, and he allowed her to sleep. He allowed her to sleep in comfortably in the living room. Well, as he went on to work the next day, she was so grateful for how nice he was. She baked him some brownies and added that special ingredient. And then she left for the day. And then he came home with his parents and his girlfriend, after a night on town, and decided to have coffee and just play bridge or something. And they decided to have some of the brownies that were in the kitchen, and they didn't think anything bad about the brownies either way. They actually started eating on the brownies, and they got high off the brownies. And I highly recommend I Love You, Alice B. Toklas from 1968 as well. Anyway, I just like to put on these little cultural references from the past and everything like that. And if you like what you heard, on that note, if you like what you heard, press like and comment. If you were not too happy about my words, comment anyway. We'll have a conversation. Feel free to share the content on this channel. As the First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you that if you have a platform, please utilize it. If you don't, create one and utilize it, because we're the muckrakers of our time. Feel free also to hit that subscribe button, that notification bell, so you can hear more commentary from yours truly. And until next time, I'm American Social Democracy. in favor of the legalization of weed. It's got my blessing. Peace. Class struggle yesterday, today, tomorrow, until we have full economic and social justice for all.